So, okay, just to be totally clear about what I'm saying, I think it's fine for the president or his employees or servants or whatever to express a preference. You know, I like NPR. They're on my side. Great, fine, okay. I don't like National Review. Fine. But to try and bully other news media into covering things a certain way crosses a line into something really creepy, into state-approved media. And I think that the press corps should have risen up as one and smacked back the White House and said, look, you know, we may not love Fox or whatever our feelings about Fox, don't tell us what to report, pal. You know, we're the fourth estate here, you're merely the president, stop it. I mean, in other words, display the kind of arrogance they normally display and self-righteousness, but in this time, in a good cause. But they didn't. They were silent because they're cowards, that's why. And it was very upsetting to watch that. Its effect on Fox, negligible. I read the numbers I read the ratings every day. You know, the trajectory's like that, as you can imagine. I mean, Fox, you know, Glenn Beck like runs America at this point. I had a long talk with Glenn Beck this morning, actually, and he, in our conversation, we talked for about 10 minutes, Glenn Beck probably laughed about 8 of them. He was just laughing the whole time. Glenn Beck's in a great mood, let me just put it that way. So he's kind of a jolly guy, but it hasn't hurt Fox one bit. It was very, very foolish. And one other thing, and I would say this of Bush, the Bush administration was starting to bully the press too right after 9/11. Ari Fleischer was given to saying things like that, and I hated it, and I said so at the time. How dare you try and boss us around? You know what I mean? Here's the difference between the press and the political hacks who work at the White House. The press at least is supposed to be telling the truth for a living. No one even pretends. If you're on the communication staff, you don't even pretend. You tell whatever lie is necessary. So don't give me a moral lecture, buddy. That's my feeling. So whatever, it got me going, excuse me. Yes, sir?
Is ClimateGate going to succeed or fail? What's your prognosis?
Will ClimateGate succeed or fail? I think, you know, I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the primary, so, you know, don't go to me for predictions, but so did everyone on my block, by the way. I had 3 people just on my block who planned on being ambassador to Belgium in a Hillary administration, and anyway, sorry. I think that, well, I'll tell you what I really think. I think that we don't know the truth of climate change, and that we need to be very open-minded about it. I think a lot of advocates for that specific position on climate change are not science-minded. They're members of a false religion that cannot handle heretics or heresy, and that false religions tend to collapse when they're exposed as fraudulent. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, this is a chink in the armor. See, the whole argument they were making was not a fact-based argument. There is a fact-based argument for global warming. There is, I'm not denying it. I don't know if I buy it, but there's a real argument. But they weren't making that argument. You know, the public defenders and enforcers of the conventional view of this. Their point was, there's a consensus in the scientific community. Don't question it. How dare you say anything that might contravene it? Be quiet, shut up, or go away. And that's not an argument, it was like a shout. And they can no longer do that. They can no longer do that because what's been exposed, it hasn't been proved that global warming theories are false, but it has absolutely been proved that there is no meaningful consensus on the central claims of those theories. I mean, I think the temperature's gone up, we know that, up until 1998, and we know that CO2 levels have definitely gone up since the beginning of the industrial age. I think we can all sort of agree on that. There's no consensus on the fact that global warming will continue in a straight line or in a hockey stick, and there's A, and B, there's no meaningful consensus that it is definitely man-made. There just isn't, and they can no longer pretend there is. So my hope is not that people will dismiss global warming as fantasy. Maybe it is fantasy, maybe it isn't. My hope is just that we have a real conversation about it. And we haven't had one, in the public space anyway. At least I've never heard it, and I sort of live in that space. So that's my view. Oh. Tell a Chris Matthews story, was the question from the front. Boy, that'd be, boy, you really kind of caught me off guard with that one. I worked next to Chris I can't even pronounce his name. I worked next to Chris Matthews for many, many years. And Chris Matthews is very much the way he seems on television, I guess would be the way to put it. Yes. Yes, I saw the word you mouthed. That's true, too. Emphatically, actually. But I would say, I would say that that's true for all people, that TV really, the idea about TV is that it's phony and that there are a lot of phonies in it. And of course, that goes without saying. That's completely true. I mean, you've never seen more, toupees and hairspray and nose jobs in your life, okay? So there are a lot of phony people, right? But the other truth and the deeper truth about television is it does over time reveal the truth about you. There's something about the camera. If you watch someone every day for an hour for 6 weeks, you will know that person. You really will get a sense of who that person truly is. And I know this from obviously experience because working in that world. And so I'm going to give a great example. People always come up to me, and one of my closest friends, my favorite people in the whole world is James Carville, who I worked with, as I said, for many years on Crossfire. And people always would come up to me and say, what's Carville like? And I say, oh, he's actually not, he's so much more reasonable than he appears on television, which is not saying much, but, and they would say, really, he's not crazy? And I would say, well, no, he's definitely crazy. I mean, like, for real. And it was totally real. I mean, like, I'll give you a great example. One time we were sitting on the set, and we had this woman on, it was right after 9/11, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but she said something that made James mad. And he went into what we used to call Nikita Khrushchev mode, where he'd just take his shoe off and pound it on the desk and go crazy. And in the middle of this rant against this poor woman, I'll never forget her face, I can't remember her name, but she was horrified. She was afraid, actually. He used a vulgar term. He used a 4-letter word on air, live. And we always pretend that we have a 5-second delay, but that's a lie, we don't. If you say it, it goes out, because we can't afford that, it's too complicated, whatever. Cable news is really live, for real. And so it went right out over the air. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he just used the bad word. And my producer in my ear is saying, stop him, you gotta lean in, stop him. And I couldn't say anything because I had a live mic, but I thought, no. I will not intervene because this is a work of art, and I just love it. I'm sorry. So afterward, in the commercial break, and the producer's so upset, and he's so afraid of James, he didn't even bother to say anything to James, but he said to me, I can't believe this, Standards and Practices is calling, and New York's all mad at us. And I leaned over to James, I said, holy smokes, man, you just said this word. He said, no, I didn't. And I said, yeah, you did. And he said, no, I didn't. And he meant it. I could tell he meant it. So about a week later, we're at dinner, and I said to him, when you said you didn't really mean it, didn't know that you said that word, did you really not know you said that word? He goes, no, sometimes I actually black out when I get really mad, but I keep talking. So I didn't really believe that either. So about a week later, he and I were at dinner. We used to have dinner all the time after the show. We'd get off at 6, and we'd head over to the Palm on 19th Street and have a few or more than a few drinks and have this big elaborate dinner, and it was always a good time. So one night we're in there, and it's late, but the only people left, and we're sitting in a booth, and at this table across the way, there's 2 very young blonde girls. It turned out later they were exchange students from Denmark. And they had asked if they could smoke in the restaurant, and the waiter said, well, just ask the other patrons. So they came over to us and said, do you mind if we smoke? Yeah, of course not, whatever. Thank you, and they went back to their table. That was it. So we finish our meal, about 20 minutes later, and we're on our way out, and James sees them sitting there. And so he decides to, kind of welcome them to Washington and kind of say, hi. So he walks up, and these 2 girls are sitting at the table, and they have ordered this piece of cheesecake that is the single most elaborate dessert I've ever seen. It's probably 18 inches high, and it's like cheesecake and kiwi fruit and whipped cream and cherries and nuts and more whipped cream and a bridge of bananas. It's unbelievable, and they're about to dig in. And so James walks up, kind of bellies up the table and goes, how you doing? How y'all been? And as he's talking, literally, he digs his fingers deep into the cheesecake, like that, and starts licking them like an animal. Is that right? Okay, well. And these girls look like he was an escaped mental patient. Like they had no idea what to do. And they didn't know whether this was what people do in Washington. It was a greeting, a very colloquial thing they hadn't read about in the Let's Go guide or whatever. They had no idea. But they were completely freaked out, so James finally just said, okay, all right, now come back, all right, So we're walking out of the restaurant, I said, holy smokes, man, you just ate that chick's cheesecake. And he goes, no, I didn't. Anyway, Chris Matthews is just like he seems. Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.